everybody, and welcome to GenFriends. I'm your host, Cheri Hudson-Passy from Carolina Girl Genealogy, and we've got a family. We've got they're our family, a fabulous panel and a wonderful special guest. So let's get started introducing this panel. We've got Jenny Hawran from Like Herding Cats Genealogy. Hello.
Hello, happy to be here.
And I still love saying that, Like Herding Cats Genealogy. I'll never get over it. I think it's the best name ever. Love it.
Thank you.
And that's really what it's like. And so we've also got Melissa Barker, our archive lady. Hello, Melissa.
Hello, everybody. So glad to be here.
Glad you're here too. Last but not least, but she's down in my corner, is Mary Kircher Roddy from MKR Genealogy and the Applied Genealogy Institute. Woo, I said it right. I'm always getting tongue-tied when I say it. Hi, Mary.
Lots of syllables in that one. Great to be here.
Glad you're here. And we're all excited to be here because of our special guest. Live and in person, we have Amy Johnson-Crowe. Oh, we all just love you so much. And, you might know Amy from a lot of different things, from speaking, from you've got this wonderful business where you help teach people how to genealogy, how to do the genealogy. But you also have this fabulous blog series that I love, and it's 52 ancestors in 52 weeks. And so you give everybody a topic and you get to write about that, and it helps us stay focused.
Yes.
And we can capture those ancestor stories. So, but you've got an addition to that this year, something new. So we wanted you to come on to talk to us about that and also to let us know what the new part is. So how are you? We're so glad you're
I am well, and thank you for having me. This is fun. Always love a chance to get together with fellow genealogists and just talk shop for a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, you never know what tangents we're going to go on, so but
tangents are the best.
Tangents are the best, right? So how long have you been doing the 52 ancestors in 52 weeks? It's been a while.
It has been a while. I think the first year that I started it, I'm pretty sure it was either 2013 or 2014. So it's been 10 or 11 years now.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I started it, you talked about, running out of ancestors. Well, I started it really as a way to make myself accountable for writing more, because writing is so overlooked in genealogy. I mean, you have the benefit of, yeah, you're recording the story so other people can, access that story later, and it's an act of preservation, really. But it's also a pretty important part of the research process.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you don't realize what you don't know until you go to write it down. It's like, oh, wait a minute, how do I know that?
That's so true.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute.
Then you find you've got little
not
holes.
right. Yeah.
You thought you had the whole story, and then you're like, oh,
How do I know that? And no, I really don't know that.
Know that.
Yeah. Like I guess I was just, dreaming when I wrote that down originally. But what I've found, and I knew this to be true of myself, and from what I'd heard from other people, that writing can feel daunting sometimes, because I think when it comes to genealogy, we think about writing, and for some reason we go immediately to the book.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
We're supposed to write the book about our ancestors. And it's like, that just feels so overwhelming.
Right.
So I thought, okay, let's take a step back. I want to write more about my ancestors. What if I just write something about one ancestor once a week? I thought, I can do that. That seems doable. So I announced it on my blog that I had at the time. And honestly, it was just a way, how they say that, when you go on a diet or you're going to start exercising, if you tell a friend, you're more likely to follow through with it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought, I'm just going to announce this to the world. And I was so surprised when people were like, yeah, that's a really good idea. Can I do that too? And I'm like, sure, why not? Come along. And that first year, it was just pick your own ancestor, doesn't matter what, just just keep going.
Just write something.
Just
Yeah.
write something. A couple paragraphs, doesn't matter what ancestor, doesn't matter
Yeah.
the topic, just write something.
Yeah.
So then I was getting feedback that, you know, needing a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was the next year, and I really should go back and actually document this. Hey, write this down. What a concept. But people were wanting a little bit more structure to it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
then I introduced the weekly themes, and I kept them, and all along the themes have been very nebulous, a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
vague.
Yeah.
Let's say open to interpretation.
Right.
And it's just a way, because I think sometimes when we sit down at the computer and we have that blank screen and we've got the cursor is flashing like, hey, start typing now. And it's like, I don't know about you, but when I was back in school, I could write a term paper on anything as long as somebody gave me the subject.
Yes.
But if the teacher was like,
Yeah.
write on anything, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, anything is way too big.
Yeah.
So with having the weekly themes, I think it really has helped just kind of spur some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea with 52 ancestors in 52 weeks is that it's doing something to get all of that stuff that we've collected and get it out of our software, get it out of our online trees, and do something with it. It isn't specifically a blogging challenge. You don't need to have a blog to do this.
Right.
I've heard from people who they send a weekly email to their siblings.
Oh.
I've heard from other people who do scrapbook pages.
Mm-hmm.
There is one woman who's doing it right now. I've seen this. She's actually done several YouTube videos.
Oh.
She had one a couple weeks ago where she interviewed, I think it was her mother. It was either her mother or her aunt, and just talking about Christmas ornaments that were special in their family and what her grandmother had done for decorating the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only like 3 minutes long,
Yeah.
but it was so cool that now the story of how this grandmother just decorated to the nines and had these very special ornaments that had to be out every year.
Yes.
And now that's a part of the story.
Yeah. And
So
it'll be
that's,
passed down through the generations because these things
mhm,
are forgotten, you know?
yeah,
And
exactly.
that's another reason why I like your prompts for the week, because it makes you think, oh, I never even thought to write about that. You know, that is important. That's an important story to tell. And so you get things out there that maybe if you were writing the story, thinking you have to have everything before you can start writing the story, these
Hmm.
little snippets are
Yeah.
wonderful because they're things you most likely wouldn't think to write because we're thinking they were born here, they were married here, they died here. Little stories here and there, but the details that you can get by using your prompts
Mhm.
are wonderful. So if people haven't done this before, maybe share some of the prompts just so they can get an idea.
So I change up the prompts every year. Now,
Yeah.
some of them do repeat,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, because right now I feel like I need to include every year the prompt favorite photo.
Oh yeah,
Because let's be honest, we have more than one favorite
of
photo.
course.
Come on.
And we're
So
collecting as we go along, hopefully, and so then a
exactly.
new photo becomes your favorite photo. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been I've had favorite photo, I've had in the beginning, and
Mm.
that's one of those prompts that you can take as, okay, this is my personal origin story. This is how I got
Ah,
started.
yeah.
You could think about, well, in the beginning, this was the first ancestor that I found. This was the first
Yeah.
ancestor I was looking for. You could write about the earliest ancestor you have documented, just
Mhm.
whatever pops into mind. I had a prompt just a few weeks ago, which was handed down,
Mm.
and people were writing about things that had been handed down in their families, like Christmas
Mhm.
ornaments, like
Mhm.
recipes. A lot of people wrote about recipes.
Yeah.
There were a story about family names that kept popping up. These
Ah,
names kept getting handed
yes.
down, and
Yes.
stories, and it was really that's what I really try to do, is to not have them so specific that,
Mhm.
well, okay, for another example, I've had something like homestead.
Yeah.
Well, you might think at first, if you're familiar with US records, you might think, well, I don't have any ancestors who had homestead records. All of my ancestors, once they got to Ohio, they stopped. I didn't have any that went out
Yeah,
west
mine got to
and had,
South Carolina and stopped.
yeah, exactly. But homestead, you could write about something you have found in homestead records, but you could
Mhm.
also write about what you think of as the family homestead.
Right.
And when I put that prompt on the list that year, my first thought was a trip that I took with my parents down to Southern Ohio, and my dad located what was left of his grandparents' house.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, the house had been abandoned for many, many years,
Yeah.
but we could still, okay, it might technically have been breaking and entering. Actually, it wasn't breaking because there was no door, so
There
there
was
was
no
no
tour.
break.
There you
There was no
go.
door, so there was
Okay.
no breaking involved. But
Yes.
but we very carefully walked in, and he said, "Okay, this is where this," because it was just a shell of the house. And he's like, "Okay, here is where what we would now call the living room, and over here
Mhm.
you could see
Mhm.
where there had been the kitchen." And he just told us about the summers that he spent there when he was young.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, and up in that hill, my siblings and I, he had a sister and two brothers. He goes, we would just roam the woods up there, and talked about accidentally stumbling upon somebody's still.
Ooh.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so they actually, it wasn't the still, it was just the bottles. And
Sure.
so they didn't know what it was.
Uh-huh.
So they took one of these bottles of this clear liquid and took it back to the house, and my dad showed his grandpa, "Hey, look what we found in the woods." And my let's see, be my great grandfather, no, my great great grandfather. Yeah, I'm a genealogist. I know relationships. Um, he was just like, "Where did you kids find this?"
Oh,
Because he immediately knew what it
of
was, and he knew
course.
that somebody was going to be missing this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Where did you find it?" And my dad said that he remembered distinctly saying, "Well, it was behind a tree. As far as you could see, there were trees
Trees
everywhere. Like it
everywhere.
was behind a tree, not very helpful." So they just hiked back in the woods and just put it back behind some random tree because they had no idea where they found it. But yeah, so that was what I thought of when I
Yeah.
thought of homestead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could just like when you mentioned at the beginning, my mind went to my mom and dad's wedding, the
Yeah.
beginning of my family. And so
Hmm.
yeah, so it is your mind will take you to all different places. And so and maybe you'll think of more than one. You can write two stories,
Yeah,
there's
you
no
can write two.
rules. That's what I like. There's no rules.
Yeah, it is like the least stressful challenge you will ever participate in, because even though I call it 52 ancestors in 52 weeks, okay, there is nobody policing this. If you skip a week, it's all right.
It's okay.
It's totally
You're not going
okay.
to come get us, right? You're not
No,
taking
I
count.
I
You're
am
not
not going
taking
to.
count.
No, I'm not keeping score. I'm not taking attendance. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be an ancestor.
Mm.
It could be a collateral, it could be
Mhm.
a cousin, it could be a neighbor.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I have thought of some stories about my dad's business partner.
Oh.
I mean, they co-owned a service station for 40 some years. I mean, so
Ah,
I know
yes,
stories about that family, and
right.
the Slanes interacted with us. So even though they're not technically related to
Hmm.
us, they're still
Hmm.
a part of our family history.
Exactly. Exactly. I
Yeah.
love that. All right. My panel knows that I would just keep talking. So who's got a, who's got a question? You got to jump in there.
Well, I do. Amy, Um, you've probably been doing genealogy as long as I have. But one of the things that I wanted to know about people who are doing your challenge is how many of them have come to you at so far along in their genealogy journey that, maybe at the beginning they were kind of like name collectors or trying to get back as far as they could and all these different things, and they kind of miss the story, the family story aspect.
Mhm.
I won't say that I was that way, but I was a little bit that way. And also I was a professional genealogist. I was always working on someone else's and I didn't get as
Mhm.
much time on my own. So now at this point in time in my life, I'm all about the stories. I'm
Mhm.
all about telling my ancestors' whole story, not
Mhm.
just their birth date, their death date. So I want to know everything. I want to know what they had for breakfast, what were their, everything. And so how many, have you had people comment about the fact that your program actually has helped them to really get in there and to tell those stories other than just, doing the basics?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty common feedback that I hear, that it makes you think about things beyond, like you say, just the hatched, matched, and dispatched. You
Mhm.
know, what is going on with, okay, family recipe. All right, so
Mhm.
we think about those recipes that get passed down to us. And now, we're getting into the holiday season. A lot of us have those things that it's not Christmas dinner
Yeah.
without this. It's
Yes.
not Thanksgiving dinner without that. And why
Yeah.
do we have this, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And even if you don't think about um, the more recent generations where you might have heard some of the stories yourself, or there is somebody that you can still ask that they're old enough to remember some of the
Yes.
older stories. Sometimes just thinking about, okay, what about if the prompt is, let's say, in the news? Well, have you looked at newspapers for your ancestor?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what little tidbits have you pulled out of there? Thinking about, I'm trying to think what the prompt was. It was something like going to the chapel, which
Oh.
I was thinking marriage records,
Uh-huh.
but somebody wrote about their ancestor who was a minister, and they hadn't
Uh-huh.
really thought about, okay, he was a minister in this denomination, which was different than what the person writing was. She's
Mhm.
like, that made me think about, well, what were his beliefs?
Mm.
So she went out and researched, I don't remember the denomination now, but
Mm.
she went out and did a little bit of research of, what was the theology of that particular church? And
Right.
what were their beliefs, and how did that play out in their everyday lives?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
it
yeah.
doesn't have to be a story that
Right.
you've heard. It can just be a different way of thinking about somebody beyond just those names and those dates.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Go ahead, Jenny.
So
Jenny's
what I
over
love
here
ab-
just kind of slyly raising
Yeah.
her hand.
She does
so
it.
what
She
I
does it. Somebody else will jump in. Like me, I just talked right over her. Go ahead, Jenny.
so what I love about you, Amy, is that you are always like ahead of the curve
Yeah.
in my view, because you were an early podcaster when people were still trying to like figure out like how do we utilize this, and then you took this blog idea, prompting idea, to a different level, because blogging, even though people have public blogs, blogging can kind of be solitary.
Mhm.
You're inside your head, and you're doing your notes and everything, and you manage to kind of gather this group of people and who are sharing, and it's like it's a writing club in a sense, and but then I don't think people realize. I guess my question is, what do you think is the status of blogging these days? Everybody says, "Oh, blogging," no, everybody's doing YouTube now and everything. I'm just curious your take on that.
I think that I don't think that blogging is dead.
Hmm. Me either.
Because you do hear that's like, oh, blogging, it's so passé. In fact, I think in some ways I would not be surprised if we don't start to see a resurgence in blogging,
Hmm.
I agree.
because I mean, it's more content for the search engines. They like
Mhm.
new content.
Mhm.
And I think that people also are realizing that different different things lend themselves to different formats.
Mhm.
Okay. And the reason that I don't call 52 Ancestors in 52 Weeks of Blogging Challenge is because I really do want people to feel comfortable in whatever format
Right.
they choose. So if you really like to write, do it as a blog or
Mhm.
do it as do it as email, do it on social media, whatever, written format you want to do, write a journal, pen, paper, you can do that too. Um, if you're more comfortable with making videos, popping up, your camera and getting the lights and, whatever, do that. So, and I think, but back to your question about the future of blogging, I think as we start to see more and more AI, and we're going to start seeing more and more AI content. I mean, we're already starting to see it,
Mhm.
but there are some things that will resonate more authentically.
Mhm.
And I think that we will get to a point where people will really start to crave authentic connection.
Right.
That yeah, entertainment is fine.
Mhm.
If I even hesitate to say that. I mean, but we can see fun things that are AI generated,
Sure.
but I don't think that that's sustainable.
Mhm.
And I think that we as family historians, we as people who are into storytelling, who are into historical research, I think that where we will have the advantage will be the authentic content that we create, whether that's blogging, whether that's video, whether that's podcasting. So I think that it's not going to necessarily be the format or the media that's important. I think what's going to be important moving forward as we start to just have this tsunami of AI generated content, it's going to be that authentically told story
Mhm.
that only you can tell. And
Yeah.
I think that that's what's going to really resonate with people in the future.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree with
Yeah,
that.
I
That
agree with that.
was a great question, Jenny. That was really good. I was gonna say that one of the benefits for me when I started doing the challenge or whatever, I was blogging, but it was the connection I was finding with cousins because they would
Mhm.
find my blog and read what I was writing for that prompt about that family. And so it was a real win-win. Not only was I getting stories down, I keep saying was because I've got to start doing it again. I've got to find some more stories and carve out some time to do it because it was so helpful. And like you said, it brings new content, to whatever you're doing. But I miss that getting the stories down and I miss
Mhm.
those connections that I was getting with other people and them saying, "Oh, I've got more to the story that I can share with you," or "Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing." And so you get this dialogue with family members that you maybe wouldn't have gotten in another way
Mhm.
because they'll read it and they'll go, "Oh, okay, that's really cool." And they're not really, it's not an epistle, it's really,
Right.
you
And
know.
it's in a format. I mean, typically when we blog, we tend to be a little bit more conversational. We definitely tend to be shorter than a book.
Mhm.
And so that makes it more approachable, more
Right.
accessible for the family members who aren't the diehard genealogists,
Exactly.
and it just makes it, if you take a prompt and you happen to mention something about, I don't know, the um, agricultural census.
Hmm.
Okay, if you write an article about the agricultural census, the non-genealogists in your family are going to go, excuse me, I
Yeah.
need to go now.
Yeah.
You've lost them. But
Yeah.
if you're relating the story that, hey, I found that in 1860, my ancestor was, he had all these bushels of corn and he had all these
Right,
bushels of wheat
right.
and he
Yes.
had and he had silkworms and
Yeah.
I am still waiting to find an ancestor that actually had silkworms. It was a
Oh,
question on one of the ag schedules. None of
uh,
my ancestors had them yet. I'm
oh,
still looking.
I haven't
But
seen one for mine either.
yeah, but it's like, discovering that they had, 400 400 hogs.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
that's a lot.
That's a lot of
But
hogs.
I mean, I think that's a lot of hogs, but if you look at the rest of the township, was it really?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Did
Yeah.
everybody have 400 hogs or did everybody else have like 12?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, so it's being able to take something and make it more accessible, a little friendlier, a little, dare I say, a little bit more fun
Yeah. Yeah.
for the non-genealogists in the family.
Exactly. Now, I'm going to
Yeah.
say something that maybe people might get mad at, but I've had a couple of family members say, please don't put all those source citations in there. A non-genealogist, I don't want to read that. And so what I've
Yeah.
usually done is that I've got sources for this information. If you want it, write to me and I can give it to you.
Yeah.
They don't
Mhm.
like it because it
Yeah.
becomes too, Mary, don't come through the screen at me.
I know.
Know your
Academic.
audience.
Yeah, because I'm writing
Sitting
for
on
the
edge.
audience. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's one thing to write, if you're writing for a journal,
yeah,
yeah, you
yeah,
need the source citations,
absolutely.
ideally properly formatted.
Exactly.
But But if you're just, and I don't want to say just blogging, but if you're blogging, if you're writing an email, if you're making a scrapbook page, if you're making a video, you really don't need all the footnotes and the endnotes. Just tell the
Tell the
story.
story.
Just know
Mary,
your audience.
Mary wants to
Yeah.
say something.
Mary's
Here
got her
comes
hand.
Mary.
Mary's got her
Mary,
finger
here we
up.
go. Yeah,
There
Mary's
you go,
coming for
there
me.
you go. I agree with the unapproachability or issue with
Yeah.
approachability about it. But this content could be out there a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If I have it and I tell people, oh, contact me if you want the information, the
Yeah.
sources on this, and I get hit by a bus tomorrow, that
Oh, I
stuff is
see what you're
gone.
saying. Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
And
know
Right.
what you could do, because I think that we as genealogists tend to think in terms of footnotes.
Mm-hmm. In
If
notes.
you,
Lots of
I was
notes.
going to say end
Yeah.
notes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
Or,
was gonna.
Okay.
yeah,
And
I mean,
notes,
you
or
can,
even just, you don't have to, footnote everything,
mhm,
but you could make a list of documents
Gotcha.
used
I
in
gotcha.
the preparation of this
yeah, have,
piece.
a bibliography,
There
Yeah.
you go.
something.
That's a good idea. That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. And what you could also do is take that blog post
Mm-hmm.
or take that email, whatever you wrote, do a little bit of formatting to it, get some good source citations, and send it in to the journal of the genealogy society that covers that area or covers that ethnic group or covers that religious denomination. As a
Sure.
former editor, I know that newsletter editors and journal editors are dying for
Yes, they
content.
are. Yes, they
So
are.
if you have that, write it up for them and send it in. And now you have taken care of the more accessible version. And
Yeah.
then you have the more structured, more scholarly version, all properly footnoted and endnoted. And that can go into that journal. And that's another form of publication. It's another form of preservation. And chances are, at least if it's published in a journal or if it's in a journal in the US, it'll probably end up in the periodical source index.
Well, this is true. Yeah,
So another form of discoverability.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Mary. From now on, I'll make a list, okay?
Yes, do something.
Okay. Do I
Something.
have to go back and redo every blog post that I wrote? Probably. Do I have time for that? No, ma'am. But I will
Well, one
take.
of the things that I really like that why Amy's doing this, and she's done it for so many years, is that it does get us talking and doing stories. We all know as genealogists that it takes two, maybe just one generation for family stories to totally disappear.
Mhm.
Well, working as an archivist and in archives every day, that's also true about local history.
Mhm.
Mhm.
As those people who are aging and elderly, as they pass on, that local history goes with them. So as an archivist at a county archive, that's why I work as in a county archive, so it's very localized. There is so much of our history that has been lost.
Mhm.
And so one of the things, and that this is, I also have very much, I have battles with my archives brain and my genealogy brain. But as a genealogist and working in an archives, I'm constantly trying to recapture or to rediscover our history. And one of the things, the way I do that is through newspapers. So and so then, I'm thinking about all the ways that we are telling these stories, and a majority of it nowadays is electronically
Mhm.
on the internet, on our phones, on our computers, all this kind of stuff. And, back in the day, it was writing journals, creating paper scrapbooks, writing
Mhm.
letters, stuff that actually survives and probably is going to survive longer than a lot of this electronic stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you do it or not, but do you give any advice, not maybe in this program that you do, but just in your teachings about how to preserve, not only preserve the stories, but preserve them in a format that is going to outlast you.
Right. So putting on my librarian hat.
Right.
So, um, and that was one of the things that I learned pretty early on when I was back in library school, and I actually had a digital archives concentration. Sometimes we overthink it,
Mm,
that we think, well, is this phone going to last for 100 years? A short answer, no, it is not.
mm,
But you know what? I don't have to make this phone last 100 years. I need the contents to last long enough to pass it on to one more generation.
Right. Yeah.
That's all we can do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for anybody out there who is listening or watching and they think, oh, well, I will just print everything. Okay, one, no, you're not. And two, and I mean that's a lot. Um, and two, yeah, paper is great until it isn't.
Right.
And until an
Because
archives tells you, we don't accept that.
yeah, the archive says I don't accept that. The
Yeah.
genealogy society says nope, we don't have room. The
Yep.
local library is like no, we don't accept it.
Mhm.
And also, if you have just volumes and volumes and volumes of paper and stuff, I'm sorry, but your descendants are not going to know what to do with it.
No, they're
So
just
you
gonna
need
throw it out.
exactly. So
Mhm.
you need to be selective. So that really, as much as people don't like to hear this, the first step of preservation is organization.
Mhm.
Because if your organizing is the file by pile method, I don't like the analogy of, well, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow. I like the analogy of if I win the lottery and I take off for Tahiti tomorrow. It's a little more pleasant.
Yeah.
Um, and also, not very likely, but it could happen. Well, no, actually it can't because I don't play the lottery, but whatever. So you have to have it in a way that somebody who is coming into it cold, they understand it.
Mhm.
Right.
And if it's just a stack and stacks and stacks of loose papers and file
Right.
folders and whatnot, it's gone.
Yeah.
So step one, organize it.
Nice. And we
Step
all have
and
that, don't we? And I
yeah,
tell
we
people,
do.
guys, file is not filing.
Yeah. And the second part of that, talking about specifically electronic records, is the I guess you would call it an acronym of LOCKSS. LOCKSS. Lots of copies keep stuff safe.
Mhm.
And that's lots of copies, meaning, yeah, lots of copies, but also different formats.
Mhm.
Yes.
Or I should say different media. and
Mhm.
ideally different locations.
Yes.
So when somebody says to me, well, Amy, should I have an external hard drive or should I be backing up to the cloud? I'm like, yes.
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking at my desk over here, and I have two external hard drives. One is for an extra archive. One is I have a Mac, so I have a external hard drive that is my Mac time machine.
Mhm.
I also have a backup in the cloud to another service.
Right, right.
And so I've got files stored in lots of different places. I know a lot of people are like, oh, but if I store something in the cloud and that company goes out of business, well, yeah. But if you're only storing something on a hard drive, whether
Mhm.
that's your computer hard drive or an external hard drive, that's a machine.
Yep.
Machines break.
Yes,
And
they do.
it's not a matter of if it will break, it's a matter of when it will break.
When,
Yes.
yep.
So if you have that backup in both places,
Mhm.
again, it's really lots of copies keep stuff safe.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. So, and I do have paper, but those are my originals, in a filing cabinet. So, but
Yeah.
they're all scanned and on a hard drive, on my computer, and in the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. And like we were talking a moment ago about taking anything that we're writing for our blog and turning it into an article,
Mhm.
as as silly as that might sound, writing that up as an article and getting it published in a newsletter or a journal or a quarterly somewhere, that really is a form of
Mhm.
preservation.
Yes.
It's getting that, it may not be saving that exact photograph, that exact document,
Mhm.
but it is preserving your research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great. That was great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Why don't you tell us what you've got new? So you've got something new coming up in 2025.
Yeah. So I have not only the 52 ancestors in 52 weeks launching again. The first set of prompts will come out December 30th because some people like to work ahead a little bit. So
Yeah.
we'll get them posted a little bit before January 1st. Um, so the program I don't think we've mentioned that program is free.
Yes, you haven't. That's right. It's free. Yeah.
It is totally free to sign up. Um, you get and what happens is you get an email every week with the prompt. I also have a free Facebook group,
Yeah.
and a lot of people who have done the challenge are also in that group. And I also post in there, and that's also a great way to sort of build a little bit of community because, yeah,
Sure.
writing or whatever it is that you're doing can feel a little lonely.
Mhm.
So just seeing other people who are going through the challenge and seeing what they're writing, I think that has really helped a lot of people stay
Mhm.
motivated and just kind of get some ideas for their own research. And we've seen a lot of people like, oh, I also have Amos's in Monongahela County, West Virginia. By the way, if anybody has Amos's in Monongahela County, West Virginia,
Okay.
DM me. Hi.
Okay.
We're related. Um, so, um, but this year I'm doing something. It's an optional add-on. It is a paid add-on, but in addition to the weekly prompt and sort of the inspiration for how you might approach that prompt, I'm also going to be sharing weekly research tips and resources that are tied in with that week's particular prompt. So
A great
that,
idea. I
yeah,
think
so
it's a
that'll also,
great idea. Yeah.
yeah, because I know some people really do like to have it as more of a research,
Mhm.
um, sort of a research angle to at least some of the prompts. And I think having that little bit of, okay, well, here is, say, something that sounds like land records. Well, what about land records? Well, here's how
Yeah.
you might approach them, and here's what you might find in a deed, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I
So
really
that
like
is that is the optional, and I'm calling that 52 Ancestors Plus.
plus.
Yes.
And we'll have the links to everything that you have in in this video and also when I put it into the blog post too. So we'll have the links to everything. But I love that idea because it's almost like sometimes, especially people just coming in and especially those of us who've been doing this a long time, sometimes it gets overwhelming. You feel like I've got to learn everything there is, but this is helping people 1 week at a time, just 1 week at a time, get a little bit of extra education 1 week at a time. And then
Yeah.
if there's something that maybe you have worked on, but you need a refresher or you need a little bit more, there you go. It's right there. So I really like this idea of that little extra tips and hints and research strategies. So I think that's a fabulous idea. I think you'll have a lot of people wanna do the plus.
So one thing I should mention is that even if you don't sign up right at the beginning of the 52 ancestors, let's say you're watching this in March or April, you still get access to all 52 weeks. And that's both the free version and the 52 ancestors plus. So, whatever option you get, if you join later on in the year, you still can see everything.
That's great to know. That's really great to know. So you're not coming in the middle. Go ahead, Mary.
Do you have an archive of your prior year prompts?
Some of them I do. Yeah, some of them I do.
Is that available out there?
It's available mostly if you email me and I find the link.
There you go. We'll have your email address on there too.
Yeah.
Especially Mary.
I was curious about what your demographic is, who are, in your Facebook group. Is it mostly women? Is it, do you have men in there?
Yeah, I mean,
writing these stories?
there are
Are they
there are a
allowed?
few men. Yeah. I mean, I've never really broken it down by demographic, but just kind of looking at comments. I mean, I think it is a majority of women. I wouldn't say that it is, 80%, but I would say it's more than 50% female. And
That's
I would
nice.
say mostly, not totally, but I would say mostly Gen X and older. Although I know that there are quite a few millennials in the group as well. Younger than millennials, I haven't seen very many, although I know that there are at least a handful. But yeah, that's
But then you have someone like Randy Seaver, who he's always
yeah.
he's always doing one of your
Yeah.
prompts. So
Yeah,
so
Randy Seaver is a machine. I
He
don't think he has
is.
ever missed a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. I remember he was one of the first people who kind of signed up
Mhm.
when I first announced it, and he never stopped.
I know.
He just
Yeah.
never stopped. So
I don't
yeah,
think he
Incredible,
ever
he's
incredible.
sleeps.
awesome.
He posts something every day.
But he
Yeah,
schedules it,
I
that's the thing, or he
know.
schedules it, maybe by day
but
it might be a
he's
different time,
but he
you know.
still writes it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even though he schedules it, he still writes it to
No, I
begin
know.
with. It's just,
He's
yeah, he is amazing.
He really,
He
really.
and somebody else the same way is Roberta Estes.
Mhm.
She has, I don't think she's missed very many weeks over the span of 52 ancestors. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, it's just a great way to, like I said before, things you never thought about writing. So it's a fabulous way of getting your ancestors' stories out and your own stories. You can use your own
story.
Yeah, you
story
are a
as
part of your own
well.
family history.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes we forget that we are.
Mhm.
And we
We
think
do.
we'll write our story another day. But no, if these things apply to you today, then write about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take it
And
little.
I would also encourage, and you probably have this as a prompt, but I would also encourage people to write your own stories.
Mhm.
Mhm.
One of the things that genealogists forget to do is to write their own stories. And I don't
Yeah.
mean, we tell genealogists beginning to start with yourself. And we normally, okay, well, I was born, I married, or whatever, and then you go on to the next thing.
Mhm.
Write your own stories. I tell genealogists when I'm teaching them about this, it's like, look, when you're no longer here, do you want your children and your grandchildren to write your story? Do you think they're
Yeah.
going to get it right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
write your story too. To me, that's really important. That's really
Yeah.
what makes the base of your family history, especially if you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
write your story.
yeah. And if you are someone who maybe has done 52 ancestors in the past and you think, oh, I've run out of ancestors, I've run out of stories, looking at you, Cheri. She's like, I've run out of people. There's nothing saying that you couldn't take the entire year
Right.
and use those prompts to write your own story.
That's right.
Exactly. Exactly. That
I
would be
mean,
a
some of the prompts you might need to, do a little something with,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you
And in
know,
100 years, our descendants will thank us because, I mean,
oh,
how many of us would love to know stories of our ancestors if they would have just written it down?
Yeah,
exactly.
anything.
Yes,
And
anything. Mary?
to think about writing your own story. I mean, when I write an ancestor story, it's still my voice.
Sure.
Writing my own story
Right.
is my
Is
voice,
your
and
voice.
that is something that
Yeah.
even if I left all the details for somebody else to write it,
Right. Yeah. It's
they
still
aren't
not the same.
me.
Well,
Right.
think about it. We are recording this the week before Christmas. So a lot of us are getting together with family, a perfect time to start listening for stories, and things like that. But think about, I know with my kids when we get together, we can be talking about the same event and all of them have a different story,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
things that I may or may not have done. So I don't want them writing my story.
Well, that's exactly right, Sherry.
Mhm.
One of the things I teach as well is that, even a lot of genealogists, they don't talk to their siblings very much because I think, well, we grew up in the same household. They have
Oh,
the same stories. No, no. I mean,
no.
I learned that lesson very hard one day several years ago when we were at my parents' house, and I only have one sibling, a brother who's 6 years older than me. And we were outside having a beautiful day, and I just made the comment. I said, we really grew up in a very wonderful family, like a Leave It to Beaver family. He turned around, looked at me, and he says, what family did you grow up in?
Wow.
And remember, he's 6 years older than me, so he
Yeah,
experienced 6 years of my parents and their
exactly.
household before I came along. And then
Mhm.
I
He
also
was
learned later that I was
protected.
protected from a lot of things. And I said, what are you talking about? And so, since then, it has been an eye-opening experience to think, I thought, well, he is a sibling. We grew up in the same house. So, yeah, no, talk to your siblings about things that because they would have heard things differently if you weren't in the room, or they would
Right.
have seen things you didn't
Yep.
see. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, so don't forget that.
Yeah.
And don't forget the
Absolutely.
younger cousins,
Oh,
Yeah.
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 because like on my dad's side of the family, there were 12 grandchildren. I was the youngest grandchild. But I had a lot of different experiences with my grandmother than my
Mhm.
oldest cousin.
Sure.
So
Sure.
she would have her set of stories with grandma. I
Yeah.
would have my set of stories with
Yeah.
grandma. And so I think that we as genealogists, we keep thinking about older generations. I think
Mhm.
sometimes we need to ask those younger people, even
Yes.
in the same
Yes.
generation, or if, there are younger people in different generations, don't overlook what they might have observed and what their stories are.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
So fun. So fun. Stories are so fun. And your program, your 52 ancestors in 52 weeks, really, really is a wonderful thing. It was it was just a wonderful idea from the very beginning. And so I'm glad. And I think it's funny because I always see at the end of the year that you say, yes, I'm going to do it again. And I feel sorry for you sometimes because I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna come up with all of these prompts, but you do it every year. So yeah,
I
it's
enjoy it. I
amazing.
enjoy it.
You are amazing. You are
Oh, thank
amazing
you.
to be able to do that, and you're a great teacher when it comes to everything genealogy. So we will put all of your links so people can get in contact with you and take the courses and listen to your podcast.
And
Melissa,
don't forget, if you didn't know, she wrote a book.
she wrote
I
a
did
book.
write a book.
Absolutely.
It's
Yep,
back,
it's
There it
right there.
is.
back there. It's
It's
back
on
there.
my bookshelf back here too.
So tell us about your book. Hold it up to the camera. Can you hold it up?
Let's see
Yeah.
if I can grab
Thanks,
it without
Melissa.
knocking everything over. Yeah. So the book, apparently I have a thing about numbers, although my first degree was in accounting. So yeah, 31 days to better genealogy.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is literally 31 tips
Yeah.
broken down. So yeah, 31 day, and it is available on Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's a really good book.
The
Thank you.
woman does everything. She does everything. Does anybody have any last questions that they would like to ask?
No.
We covered everything. And Amy, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you're thinking, wait a minute, did you ask me here?
I think we've covered a lot.
I think we have to. I think we have to. It's been so much fun to have you on. And again, we will put all the links to everything, Amy, on
Check the description.
exactly. It'll be on the blog post and on the YouTube video. So thank you so much for coming and joining us. I saw that you were doing this. I thought, we haven't talked to Amy. We need to have Amy on. So
Thank
anyway,
you for having me. This has been fun.
of course. And anytime, you got something else you want to talk about that you're doing, some other thing, I don't know how you would have time to come up with some other thing. Please let us know. We would love to
Will
have you
do.
back. So
Will do. Thank you.
with that, we will say goodbye to everybody and tell you thank you for watching Gen Friends. And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.